The Craig Ferguson Pants on Fire tour is on sale now. It's a new show, it's new material, but I'm afraid it's still only me, Craig Ferguson, on my own, standing on a stage, telling comedy words. Come and see me. Buy tickets. Bring your loved ones. Or don't come and see me. Don't buy tickets and don't bring your loved ones. I'm not your dad. You come or don't come, but you should at least know it's happening. And it is. The tour kicks off late September and goes through the end of the year and beyond. Tickets are available at thecraigfergusonshow.com/tour. They're available at thecraigfergusonshow.com/tour or at your local outlet in your region. My name is Craig Ferguson. The name of this podcast is Joy. I talk to interesting people about what brings them happiness. Yes. My guest today is one of my oldest friends. When I say one of my oldest friends, she's younger than me, but I've known her for a very long time. She gets very uncomfortable when I say how clever she is. But she's very clever. She's a great writer, and she's a great person, and her name is Denise Mina. Hi. Hello, pal.
Hello, darling. How are you?
You know I'm okay. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not bad at all. Yeah, not bad. I've got massive glasses on. I don't know if I'm just going to be like Deirdre Barlowing it the whole time.
Well, I think for our American listeners, we have to explain who Deirdre Barlow is before we go any further.
She was a soap star in Britain in the 70s. She was famous for wearing gigantic eye-obscuring glasses. So she looked like a serial killer, but she didn't kill anybody, I don't think.
Well, I think the show she was on was Coronation Street, right?
Mm.
And Coronation Street is the longest running soap opera, I think, in the world.
Yeah. I think it is. I think you're right, yeah.
And I think that by now they've probably had at least one. My guess is they've had at least one serial killer storyline by now.
No, you don't understand. No, you're wrong.
Oh, really?
They have to stay on brand, you see? So it's like certain magazines will only have people falling over. They won't have violence. They won't have. So maybe someone fell over, or maybe several people fell over in the vicinity of the same person, but I very much doubt they had a serial killer. It's so off-brand.
Well, but I think that if someone falls over and dies, maybe towards the end of a season, and that happens a few times, we've got to think we might have a serial killer on our hands, Denise.
A serial toppler. That would be more.
Serial pushing people over. Look, I'm not trying to steer your career in any way, but I think an idea for a book, next book, could be the pushing people over, making it look like they fell serial killer.
I think there's a few things. I think in real life.
There probably has, actually. One of the things that I really because you and I have known each other since, I think, even before you wrote your first book. Wow.
Actually, yeah.
So, I mean, there have been times when, I've thought, because I've known you for such a long time, that I read everything you do because I like it. And it's tricky because sometimes when you have a friend who writes and you're like, oh yeah, that was good, but it wasn't that good. But I have read everything you've done. And I...
You've just slagged my whole career.
No, it didn't slag your whole career. This is the opposite of that. What I'm saying is I've read it all, and what I was trying to get to was that you are, I always think of someone who's very positive and cheerful, and you you head towards positivity all the time, and you've always done that, and all the time I've known you. And yet, some of your work is the darkest I've ever read. That's part of the reason why I love it so much. And I wonder what do you think that is? Do you think you get out all your dark shit when you're writing? Is that what it is?
I don't think so. I think we tend to think of light and dark as binaries, and actually there's a lot more mix. And I see that in your comedy all the time.
How dare you? You should slag my entire career.
But things that you find really, really, really funny are very, very dark. Like, I mean, I
Yes.
remember you being unable to stop laughing because you were describing yourself sitting on the end of the bed in your vest and pants having a breakdown.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I
It's
mean? And
not
I
great.
think actually, what does lightness do? Do you know what I mean? It makes the dark bearable, and actually, it's kind of like only eating salt or only eating meat. I mean, you really want them together. Do you know what I mean? And I think people always say that to crime writers. You're also jolly. Do you get all your darkness out in the page? And it's like, no, we are really kind of thick fucks.
Either that or very well adjusted in the fact that you understand. Because what you described there, the idea of being able to keep light and darkness, and and it's all it's a spectrum or a flavor in a recipe. I think that's a very healthy, well adjusted way of looking at things. But I think there's a couple of times, there's a couple of instances. I can't remember. Oh God, there was one of the books. I can't remember the exact book, but it was about a horrible killy person that was going into a room and he didn't know what he was going to go in, but he was going to fuck it when he got in there. That was the phrase that said. Do you remember that book?
Yeah,
I thought,
I do.
That's about as twisted and hard as anything I've ever read, and the knowledge of that. See, I think I try and keep darkness away by what I do. And I think you're quite brave. I think you just let it roll in.
I don't think you are keeping it. I mean, standing up in front of people.
It's working. I'm just saying that it's what I'm trying.
I don't know. I mean, I think if you really love the world and you really love life and you really love people, you have to be able to see both sides. Do you know what I mean? And everything gets heightened. If you have a very kind of, boring narrative and it's, the stakes are low and, do you know what I mean? It's like everything's very heightened. It's one of the reasons I love horror so much is because things are funnier. I don't think you really do, yourself any favors by trying to sanitize everything. Life isn't vanilla,
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
I know.
I can't think of anything darker than standing up in front of an audience full of people and trying to make them laugh.
Well, certainly it has. It has. Have you never tried it?
I couldn't do it because if the audience hate me, I just I don't care. I've died.
Really?
When I was talking. Oh, so badly. I was in front of 500 people. There was a whole lot going on. I gave an after dinner speech, and everyone hated me. I mean, it was tangible. You could feel the hate, and I insulted everybody. And then I doubled down on it by saying, "I don't care what you think." And then I said, "Thank you for giving me this appalling experience to tell on another occasion."
Well, that sounds like a lot of stand-up comedy performances, particularly in the early years, that when you start to love it, so when you start to look for that failure, I think that's what it is. That's when you know you are. I don't know. I wouldn't give up on your stand-up career just yet. I think it might be fun, but it's part of life now for authors, isn't it? That you have to do all that. You have to be much more social.
Much more social. And I've got about 2.25 hours of social in me. And then I start to actually kind of see things, or I have to go to the toilet because I'm really introverted. There was a thing at London Book Club, and it was a poster on the back of the wall from the Finnish Book Society. And it was a picture of a woman with her knickers round her ankles sitting on the toilet, and it said, "Thank God I'm finally alone."
I understand it. I understand. Why is, what do you think the thing is that people have to have a connection, particularly with crime writers? I think that although I feel like, and I mean this as 100% as a compliment, I feel you've kind of transcended that a wee bit. You've kind of branched out a wee bit from only writing about, no, you never really only wrote about crime anyway, because it was always had a psychological and a personal kind of depth to it. It wasn't kind of like just procedural. But with crime writers, if you're perceived to be a crime writer, you have to go to these conventions and people need a connection with you. What do you think that's about?
I have no idea, because these audiences are not really our readers. It's all women who look a bit like me. So I'm just in a room full of women of my age who look a bit like me. That's not who reads my books. And I'm not that interesting on stage. You're listening right now. It's quite banal. Do you know what I mean? I don't have the answers to anything. I don't know what it's about. It's a kind of. There's a lot of collectors.
There's that, and do you think maybe it's aspirational? If you're talking about, there's a lot of women who look like you in the audience, but they don't buy your book. Do they want to be writing your book? Do you think that's what it is?
There's a lot of questions about how do you write with a pen or a pencil? Where'd you get your ideas from?
Yeah.
All that stuff.
Which leads me to my next question.
I remember 100 years ago you saying to me, where'd you get your ideas for your feminism from? After somebody had been murdered.
I did not say that.
You did say that. You did say that. Yeah,
no, you're confusing me with somebody else. I feel like I know where you get. I feel you've never been kind of reticent about telling me where you get your ideas for your feminism from. I don't think I need to push you for it. It's funny though. I mean, it's such a strange thing though, because I was thinking today before we started talking about when you and I met, which is, it's about 30 something years ago now. Like, it's really a long time.
Oh my God, yeah.
And that kind of strange.
Old. We're so old.
Well, yeah, but we look fantastic, so I think it's okay.
We kept our hair, Craig.
We kept our hair, and we both moisturize, and I think that's the key.
And we can't take the sun.
Well, I had to move from LA. It was too much. I've had have you ever had things zapped off you? I've got age spots that I've had to have taken off.
No, from being in LA.
Yeah. I on my hands as well from driving.
Wow.
I know. You sit like that and your knuckles got all age spots on them.
Wow. I live where the sun don't shine, so
you
I'm
do.
fine.
You live in Glasgow, which I've always been very envious that I love Glasgow, but I always have a complicated relationship with it. You seem to be very at home there. Like I mean, I've seen you ride about on your bike and you wave to people and you're kind of you say you're not social, but I feel like you're very social in Glasgow. I feel you're very much part of the community.
Well, yeah, I suppose so. But I mean, I didn't grow up here. So my dad was an oil engineer, and I grew up in Paris and Norway and London and Amsterdam because he was a draftsman. So Glasgow sort of where I chose, because I grew up in South London as well. So I feel like you probably feel the way I feel the way about Glasgow that you do about places that you choose to stay. Do you know what I mean? It's a different relationship.
That's funny because you've got a very Parisian and Norwegian accent that I think is. Do you speak Norwegian?
Yeah, but Jonahan Snickers.
Is that true?
That is true.
Is it really?
That's me asking for a Snickers.
I got Snickers. I got that's the extent of my Norwegian.
But that's as much as you get out, because if you even get on the bus and say Aina Barn, they say, "Oh, you English speaker," because they know your accent's rubbish, and everyone's fluent. You know.
I know Mexican people do that to me in Los Angeles. I try and speak Spanish, and they smile indulgently and then just speak English to me, which is kind of embarrassing, but also there's a kindness to it as well. But why did you choose Glasgow then? If you went, because your family was from there, is that why?
Well, to be honest, I took a lot of drugs and I kind of blacked out and woke up here. That is essentially what happened. And my mum was here because my parents had just split up, and she said, "You can sleep on my couch." So it was a very thought out life plan. I mean, I had to,
I've taken a lot of drugs and woken up places and thought, I don't want to live here. I want to live somewhere else.
But Glasgow at that time, it was the 80s, right? So everyone with any ambition left.
That's right.
And they all went to where I'd been living, because I'd been living in South London, which was Thatcher, I mean, it was like on, capitalism on steroids. And I came to Glasgow and there were all these beautiful buildings. You couldn't get anywhere to live in London as well. We were all squatting. And you came to Glasgow, and it was like, you could get these rooms that were like ballrooms, and you could rent them for 20 quid a week. And it was like West Berlin. It was like an abandoned city that nobody wanted to live in. And, there was a lot of freedom in that, and I just completely fell in love with it. And also people were quite kind to each other. They would chat to each other, and they would, ask how you were, and then they would listen to how you were. I mean, it was just a really odd place.
Does it still have that? Because it's funny. It's my hometown, but I don't feel that way about it at all. It's. Does it still have that, you think?
It really has that. But I have to say, you are from Cumbernauld, which is
True. Well, I'm not. I'm from Springburn, but I grew up in Cumbernauld, which is not good. No,
I'm from East Kilbride.
Right. So it's very similar.
I didn't move back to East Kilbride. I think East Kilbride was the Catholic version of Cumbernauld.
I think there are Catholics in Cumbernauld that would be outraged by that statement.
But I think a lot of the Catholics moved to East Kilbride, and and these are new towns. So these are like 70s towns that were built to ease the housing shortage, and they're quite far away from the city. And they're very different than the actual city. The actual city feels very glamorous in comparison, I think.
I always thought like the West End of Glasgow to me, and it still kind of does actually when I go there. I feel like it has a kind of, it feels like Paris or the Upper West Side of New York or something like that. It's got a sort of glam about it. It was just strange, but it's true. And you and I both worked in the Ubiquitous Chip bar as well, which seems to, and Kelly MacDonald worked there as well. And I think if you were an artist of a particular type, you had to spend at least a year working as a waiter in the Ubiquitous Chip.
Everyone I know works in the Chip. And,
it was amazing.
For people who don't know, it's a restaurant, and it was named after a line in a play about Scottish cuisine. And the line was, overboiled potatoes, ruined vegetables, and of course the Ubiquitous Chip. So it's a fine dining restaurant called after that. It's called the Ubiquitous Chip. So it's quite pretentious, and it was full of pretentious wankers like us who had aspirations. Do you know what I mean? We had aspirations.
But you were sober when you worked there, weren't you? I wasn't. I was still drinking when I was working there, because I remember how much it was a real illustration, because I would work in the bar and I wouldn't be able to drink that much while I was working the bar. And I would see people drink that Fürstenberg lager. And it was like people that would come in normal and go fucking crazy after like 4 pints. And I kind of think there was some information about me about this is what you are like, Craig, when you start drinking it. I think it began to kind of sink in a bit, because there's a lot of bacchanalian behavior in that. I don't know if there still is, but there certainly was in the 80s. Is there really? Is it still there?
Oh, yeah, it's still mental. And there's a roof garden now where everyone goes up and smokes hash and pretends they're not smoking hash. But there used to be a spiral staircase down to the toilets.
Yes,
and we installed a video camera. I'm sure you remember it. I'm sure your face remembers it. We had a video camera at the top, and at the end of the night we used to say, "Time, gentlemen, please," and the bar would empty, and then we'd all stand and watch the video monitor and kill ourselves laughing.
I know.
Tumble thoughts.
I remember working there. You would get an extra £4 on your shift, an extra £4 if you cleaned up, if you took the bucket and cleaned up any sick. So if there was any vomit lying around, you would get an extra £4 on the top of your shift. I always would do it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it was my sick.
Well, just to give you some idea of the management of that place, they adored you, right? Because you weren't even famous when I worked there. I worked there after you. I was not drinking. They hated me. They could never remember. They did not like me. They thought I was a torn-faced bitch. Every time they had a party, they'd give you all presents, and everybody would get whiskey, and I would get a bottle of Blanc de Blanc because they couldn't remember that I didn't drink. I mean, it was just like, you just were very suspicious of me.
You have just described my exact experience of 23 years in Hollywood.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I felt like I was there and they kind of tolerated me, but it was like, no, you are not part of this. We are a different gang to you. And it's, But I wonder if that's if you choose that a little bit, because you and I are quite similar. You and I could be brother and sister, really. I think, and people have said that.
Might be. I think we might be some way back. Same face.
Which is great because I'm glad that we never like kissed or anything when we were drinking. That'd have been bad. That'd have been bad.
Especially.
Although I would have done it, but I don't think you would have done it. I don't think. I remember because but I didn't even know this until years later that you interviewed me for boyfriend job, and I failed terribly.
Did I?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I remember like when we went to St Andrews, remember, and we had a drive. We drove up to St Andrews and walked around the graveyard. And I thought we were on a day out. And then you told me when you were on the late night show that you had interviewed me. You may have just been kidding me, though. I think now as I think about it, I think you were just fucking with me. You said that I was interviewing you for the job of boyfriend, but you just talked about yourself the whole time and I got bored. So
that does sound right.
It does sound true. That's all I could think about at the time. I mean, I struggle with it now. But
did we go all the way to St Andrews?
I think we did because I remember specifically it was we remember that big old Mercedes that I had that I looked like I was an African ambassador or something like that.
That was a lovely car. That is a lovely car.
Great car. And we drove it up to St Andrews and we were walking around the graveyard because I think we were both you don't remember any of this?
I remember being stuck on a wall and thinking, I should have thought of this when I got on the wall. I'm freezing on a wall. It's too high.
Yeah,
and I remember fish and chips, and I remember saying, castle, that's kind of, but I do remember that car. It was lovely.
I remember walking around the graveyard and you saying, look at all these poor bastards. They all thought it was so important. And I thought, God, that really stuck with me. It's one of those things because I was still vibrating. You had cleaned up your life a couple of years ahead of me, and I was still vibrating from like coming off the alcohol and drugs and trying to figure out how you could possibly live a life and be creative and all that old shit that people believe about alcohol and drugs. I love the fact that your output, certainly mine, but yours, it seems to be all post sobriety. All your like the real surge of what you do is after you go sober.
Yeah. I mean, I just wasn't capable before. I find it hard enough sober, to be honest with you, because it is. Do you know what I mean? It is like you are kind of face to face with your own limitations, and if you're drinking on top of that, you just go out and have an affair. Do you know what I mean? You just find some other way to distract yourself or get involved in a fight.
Well, yeah, you can do both in the same night. It's funny though, because I think of you as being someone who is like your output is prolific and has never. I mean, I know it makes you uncomfortable when I say how much I enjoy your work, and that's that's one of the reasons why I bring it up so often, because I enjoy seeing you get uncomfortable about it.
I just think you're lying.
I'm not lying.
What else are you going to say? Not. I'm right here. What else are you going to say?
Yeah, but I'm not going to say that. I remember because, and it's an interesting thing because I had to train myself to stop doing something similar. Like if somebody came to see me in a show and then they came backstage afterwards and if they said something like, that was a great show, I would tell them why it wasn't a great show. And I would say, no, it wasn't a good one tonight. You should have been here last night. And I had to stop doing that because you take people's enjoyment away a wee bit from it. And I wonder, it's quite an interesting thing because with the writing, because I've written a wee bit, but the writing that you do is so, I can imagine it like, and maybe I'm wrong, you tell me, but it seems like it would take over every thought process you had going. It'd be very kind of insular. And then it belongs to everybody else. And they have to tell you what they think about it and how, and they're part of it now, but they weren't really part of it. They just got to consume it. It's a weird thing. I think it must be strange to discuss your work with people who have different opinions about your work than you do.
Do you know, even if it's the same opinion, it is like, I mean, I can say rude words, can't I? It is like someone appearing at your house to discuss your masturbatory style. It's kind of like, how the fuck is this anything to do with you?
Which leads me to my next question.
No, but you know what I mean? It's like, you work on something really intensely for a year and a half, you research it, and you go in that world, you create a world, and you know all the people in it, and you're really, really involved. And then a journalist writes 2 paragraphs telling you what they think of it, and you're kind of like, who the fuck are you to me? I don't know you. Fuck off. You know what I mean? And then you meet them and they're lovely, and you have to say, oh, thanks for the great review. You past remarkable bastards.
I know. It's a conflicting opinion. You know what I hate is the tendency now to the top 10 list of everything. Like, so I mean, it's really bad, I think, in the world of books, where it's, the best sellers. So if a book sells more than another book, it's a better book than the other book, which I think is beyond fucking ludicrous. But it's with everything. Everything has that. And
that's just saying that the market is the measure of everything. That, like, you must see stand-ups who are terrible, and they're just doing a small echo of brilliant work, and they're copying other people. Sometimes they're lifting jokes, and they're storming, and everyone thinks they're a genius. And I think there are comedians who are they really there for people who don't have a sense of humor.
Oh, that's mostly what it is.
But they like laughing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So they're kind of doing a performance of stuff other people do, and that's for the mass market.
Right? Does that happen? Does that happen in? Well, I guess that does happen in crime books for sure. I've read crime books and I've been like, wait a minute, this is I've come across this style of even this story before. Do you get antsy about people nicking your stuff? Because I know stand-ups are paranoid about it all the time. Oh, yeah.
No, you can't. You'd go mad. You have to. I mean, sometimes I do actually take photographs of massive bestsellers, paragraphs in them, and I read them over to give myself a good laugh, because it's like, if I wrote that, I'd be too embarrassed to go out the house.
I know.
Do you know, we're trying to do different things. But you must get like, those bestseller. A lot of those are manipulated. It's about the number they produce. It's about the number, where they buy them. New York Times bestseller, the actual bestseller thing, I think, is heavily manipulated.
Oh, sure. I mean, yeah. I know that because I've been on the receiving end of it both times. I mean, when my book wasn't being sold in the right place and when it was. And And, I mean, I see a lot of books on that you don't see anywhere in anyone's house. No one's reading them. Do you know what I mean? So you don't want to worry about the market, because it's a one-to-one relationship if you're writing books. It's you and the reader. And I always kind of imagine they're reading in a really comfy chair, and I'm sort of leaning over their shoulder and whispering the story in their ear. Okay, that's quite creepy, especially with some of the stuff that you write. That's very bad.
Well, I don't want you to imagine that.
Do you ever get scared when you're writing something scary?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah, really scared. And then I think that's brilliant. I think I might have done something really clever there. And then I go to bed and I get up the next morning and read it, and it's usually absolute garbage.
I think that, it's anything written after sundown and I've written after sundown is shite.
Really?
If I write, in fact, I'll never send a text or an email after it gets dark, because I'll probably regret it.
What a mad rule.
Oh, fuck, I never made any claim in the 30 plus years I've known you. I've never said at any point, I'm a fucking barometer for mental health. I've never said that. I never said that to anyone. In fact, the people. What's that?
You never text someone to say, "Are you watching Bake Off?" Or
no. You and Megan do that. You have that kind of, you talk to each other. Megan, of course, being my wife, you guys talk to each other in a way that I don't do. I'm maybe with Megan, because I'll text her if I'm on the road. I'll talk to her in the text and stuff like that. But that's about it.
How do you know who to hate on Bake Off? Then how do you know who's attractive?
I can't. I don't hate the Bake Off is one of the few things that I can watch without any negative feeling at all, other than sadness for the people who are leaving. It's a fucking national a world treasure, the Great British Bake Off.
I'm worried about the waste. It's so wasteful. They're always saying, I made this cornucopia of shortbread yesterday. And I'm like, well, what happened to that one?
Well, they give it to the crew. Do you know that? Because I thought about that.
Did you?
Yeah, the crew gets it. The people who work on the Bake Off, they're all like, £500.
Oh, you've made that so much better for me. I'm delighted.
No. They don't throw it out. People eat it and stuff like that. Or I think they give it to needy, people in society.
Homeless people that need a cake.
That's
homeless people that need a gasso in the shape of Freddie Mercury.
They are lovely, though. I think that the idea. Do you bake?
I used to bake, but I'm so compulsive. I would make a tray bake, and then I would eat the tray bake, and then I'd be sick, and then I'd bake another one.
I very much identify with that. But I think because every time, like in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or more, every time most of the time I've seen you is in your kitchen.
The parliament of the house.
It really is. I mean, your kitchen in particular, you have a giant teapot and usually good cakes, and then, very deep. It's a salon environment, Denise. Do you have other writers in there for like Dorothy Parker type round table shit?
Well, because I'm quite dull because I don't drink. So we do have soup Sunday. So we do have once a year, we'll have a lot of writers round, and we'll all eat soup and complain about our income. And actually, it's weird because you would think that we would be making statements about the nature of life or talking about literature. Mostly what we're talking about is times we made fools of ourselves over the course of the year. So the winning prize this year was Louise Welsh. She's a fantastic Scottish writer. She was telling the story about she was being translated during a tour of Germany by someone who was also a clown, but in the old tradition.
That's awesome. So the clown was doing.
No,
that's fantastic.
But he didn't clown up until the very last, and then on the very last event, which was a big deal in Berlin, he said, I want to do my act before you come on and talk about literature. So he clowned up, died, because the audience weren't there to see a clown, and then insisted on remaining in his clown outfit to translate what he was talking about.
What? How? Oh, jeez. That seems... Way to make it about you. I think if you're the translator, you shouldn't really be trying to make it about, I want to be a clown. I mean, it's not your day.
But as Louise says, we're all quite mild people who are really up for adventures. You know what I mean? So mostly it's like one of us falling over and someone coming over and kicking you, and then a dog humping your leg, and then people queue up and buy your book, and then the conclusion of it is, oh, do you know what I mean?
The clown thing is great, though. Did you ever write about? I feel like clowns are. I'm one of the people that believes that clowns are intrinsically, it's an evil thing. It's a way to hide. Maybe even stand up. Do you think? Have you written yet the serial killer clown book, or are you working on it right now?
I'm working on it right now. Obviously, this is my next pitch. No, I'm not.
Are you? Because I really like the book you wrote about Mary Queen of Scots' pal Rizzio, right?
Rizzio, yeah.
Rizzio, yeah. And that was I really loved that, and you actually turned a corner for me because through that. Because it was as far as I know, that was your first historical fiction. The Long Drop was sort of set in a period in time, but that was the 1960s. So it's kind of, sort of in living memory sort of thing. But Rizzio was Mary Queen of Scots. And because I loved that so much, what I started doing is reading Gore Vidal's historical novels. They're fantastic.
He's such a great writer, though. He's so...
Oh, my God.
Great stylist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I mean... amazing. I'm reading right now Creation. Have you read Creation?
No.
It's set during the Persian-Greek Wars of 500 years BC. It's fucking amazing, Dan.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're right. It's not in it. You're not in it in the sense of like the other Berlin girl and I mean, it's really. It feels. I mean, there's a bit of that, but it's more kind of. It's so vivid and contemporary that you really believe the people, and that's why I wanted. That's why I wanted to, because I feel like it's part of my job as your friend to push you and annoy you into directions so that you actually think about doing work that I've enjoyed before. And I think that I'd like to push you into more historical work because you have that, excuse me, you have that gift of making people who have been dead for hundreds and hundreds of years like they're in the next room with a fucking iPhone. And that's great. That's a rare talent, and you should do more of it.
Okay, that's great. That's a top tip.
Right, good. So that's really what. And also put a clown in.
Shall I tell you the truth about that?
Yeah.
Tell you the truth about the right.
Yeah.
You can't really make a living doing that, right? So publishers and readers who read crime fiction, we are really greedy readers, right? So that's a living, okay? So, but writing kind of, very formed historical fiction. I wrote a book called Three Fires, which was about Savonarola and Florence. Those books are really precious and I really love doing them, but you can't make a living doing that. So if you want to make a living and actually you want to talk about big themes, the vehicle for that is crime fiction. And I think crime fiction, because it's so familiar, we take it so for granted, but actually it is a very, very, very difficult thing to do. So for example, what I'm writing at the moment is a book about a forensic scientist who discovers that her discipline is bullshit. And which is like this is happening. I mean, science changes all the time. But what we're discovering now is that law is static, science changes. And you couldn't do that in any other context. You know what I mean?
You're right.
Yeah. But I mean, I love for me, writing historical fiction or historical non-fiction fiction is just as delicious as writing crime fiction. But there just aren't the sales in it. You might get one big book, but you don't get like a readership or a dialogue.
Right, I get it. I understand.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's an interesting thing because I think that, and I'm certainly guilty of it right now in this conversation, you forget that people have to make a living. Particularly if they're in artistic endeavors, you forget about that. Like there are bills to pay. It's a job as well as an art.
It's your life.
Yeah.
And I think because of Byron, I read a brilliant biography of Byron, and he came from money and refused to take money from his books being published. And that is the model. We all act as if no one's from a blue collar background. We've all got a trust fund, as you and I both have. Yeah. Nature scum.
Yeah.
The big old Irish face. Obviously, we don't come from money. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I think most people. You know what? Most people.
It's funny. Because I remember even like when I was a kid, people saying, like you would get asked in interviews, why did you take the part? And I would always like make up things like, oh, I really like the script. I never read the fucking script. I read my lines. I read how much I would have to do. Because what you're really doing is money. It's to make a living.
Yeah.
But your degree is in criminal law though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's criminal law and forensic. So I did forensic science as honours. Yeah. And I won the prize actually. I won the Gilbert Ford. Actually, the door was knocked after I graduated, and it was the postie. And I thought we were getting evicted from that dirty flat I used to live in. I want to talk to you about the sleepy chair in that flat because a lot of people don't know about the sleepy chair. And I think the statute of limitations is up. You can talk about that flat, but tell me what happened. The door get knocked and what? The door get knocked, and I had to sign for a parcel, and I'd won the prize for forensic science, the Gilbert Forbes gold medal, and I was like, they'd forgotten to give it to me at graduation. So I still have it, actually. I've got it in my medicine cabinet.
Yeah. That's fabulous. Congratulations. I didn't know you'd won that prize, and I feel like I'm belated.
I winked the wrong eye there.
a wink and a salute is always a way of proving you're cooler than anyone else in the room. But let's talk about the sleepy chair in your flat, because I think it's a story that... Have you written that into a book yet?
No, I haven't. I've only just told you.
Oh, really? I think it's such a great thing. So there was a chair in your flat. And
I was living in a flat that was basically falling apart, and you were up in it, and we were so poor. It was me and like 4 guys. We were so poor. We had done some decoration that we used knitting patterns for in the shape of a cross. Do you remember that in the toilet? But anyway, it was, we were all, I think we were all like kind of depressed, and we were kind of like watching TV, and we had this chair, and we called it the sleepy chair because every time anyone sat in it, they fell asleep. And we were like, yeah, that's a sleepy chair, and don't sit in the sleepy chair. And then my partner and I bought that flat, did it up, and when they came up to look at it, the place where the sleepy chair was, they discovered there was a massive gas leak.
You're so lucky nobody died in that chair.
Oh my God. And the whole thing could have blown up because
I know.
We didn't have any heating in Scotland. So what we were doing was we thought we were being very modern, and we were taking the doors off the oven and just lighting it into the room, and we were warming ourselves right next to the sleepy chair. Smoking, of course, we were all smoking.
Fuck, yeah. I know. I miss smoking. I really do. I don't miss alcohol at all, and I don't miss drugs. Well, maybe drugs a little bit, but fucking smoking. Jesus.
Oh, I miss it every day. Every day at some point, I think, I'd love a cigarette right now.
Yeah, it's the weirdest. I haven't. So how long since you smoked a cigarette?
Oh, decades.
Yeah, me too. And
but look, I'm still on the patches. Still got your patch on. Yeah. Still messing about trying to find a way to keep nicotine. I actually got so addicted to nicotine chewing gum, I ended up buying out-of-date nicotine chewing gum from a dodgy chemist because it was half price. And I was using like 3 times as much as you're legally supposed to.
But that's okay, because it's probably, if it's out of date, its half-life is diminished, which means that you're probably just taking the regular amount. You and I should never enable each other. I feel like that's a terrible idea.
It's like, cheers, and then 2 minutes later we're robbing a post office. But I was telling somebody once about being on this TV show, and I said she wasn't very nice to me. It was a producer. I said it was a live TV show. It was going out at 11 o'clock on a Friday, and then I sort of told the story, and I sort of realised that I was really, really at fault because I'd been on with this Icelandic band, and they were very clearly fans of substances. So they sort of said, do you want some of this? Do you want some of that? And then they said, did anyone want some snuff? And I Rolodexed through what I was allowed. And I was like, I'm allowed snuff. Give me too much. Give me so much that I'm vomiting at the side of the soundstage into a bin 2 minutes before we go out live.
That's no reason to be rude to someone.
And we did.
Jesus. Is snuff tobacco? I don't think I've had snuff.
Don't take snuff.
I'm not going to.
That's number one. Don't take snuff. It's very difficult to get hold of, and it makes your hair fall out. It makes your hair thin. It makes you put on a lot of weight as well.
That does not sound like anything I'm interested in.
You wouldn't like that.
No, I'm looking for a cross between Rogaine and cocaine. That's what I want. That's the opposite of snuff. It's funny though. Do you still get snobby about drugs? Because I do. Like when people are like, because everybody smokes weed on the street in America now, and everybody's, it's everywhere. The smell of weed is everywhere in New York City, and I think, get yourself a proper drug. I find myself thinking, I know it's very pathological. I'm like, that's not a proper drug. Take a proper drug, cocaine or heroin or something. But I suppose that's not a healthy attitude.
It's not a healthy attitude. And,
no, I know. I wear that.
Do you know, we're so vanilla. We don't really know what drugs are now. Drugs are very different.
I know. They've got really bad ones.
Do you know what I mean? We would not be alive now. All these young ones. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's a serious business the minute you start taking it. We thought it was serious, but it was a moral panic. It wasn't really a physically dangerous thing every time you took something and it is now. We just
That's true with the fentanyl thing. You could just like the first time done.
Do you know
lights
what I mean?
out.
We
It's
guys,
horrifying.
we kids,
Yeah.
So we got off lucky. I mean, I think the reason we're both here is probably because, because I mean, who at a party back in our day, somebody handed you something and you took it, you didn't know what it was.
Yeah, I know.
You know?
I mean, it terrifies me now because we both, have young adults, and it's terrifying. It's terrifying that it's out there like that, and I think the drugs are so good now as well, like in terms of like potency and like people will say things like strains of marijuana, like so it doesn't make any sense to me. It's like they'll say, because I remember like the when I took marijuana, the hash was hash, marijuana was marijuana, grass was grass, hash was hash. That was it. And I remember once having one of my few homosexual encounters when I was a young man, and I said to a gay friend later, "It's not really for me." And he said, "It was probably the wrong one." And I said, "No, I don't think there are strains sufficient." I tried it and it's not for me. But hash now, there are so many different strains of it that the people will say, because I got psychotic from marijuana, like crazy.
Really?
But apparently certain strains do that to people and other strains don't. It's too late for me now and I'm glad of it. But I went crazy on it.
Gone are the days of, going up to the Trossachs and sitting, looking over the city and taking what turned out to be half an aspirin. And you'd pay 20 quid for it, Everybody knows what they're getting now.
Do you remember Dodo tablets? Do you ever take Dodo tablets?
No.
We used to take Dodo tablets were a bronchial thing. They were in Scotland. There was some kind of bronchial thing. But if you took Dodo tablets and drank cheap wine and then sat on the train in Springburn, the vibrations felt really fabulous.
That's just auto-suggestion.
I mean, it was such a mess. But it's funny, I think of like those days, because you and I never really, we never crossed paths until we got sober.
Yeah.
But the darkness and that you described, the kind of comic darkness of drinking and using in those times, I think we both ended up at where we were because of that influence, of that kind of hilarious despair of the kind of the mid 80s. If you were like in Scotland, it was terrible, but awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome because it's past.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Because it was grim and we were both very depressed. Let's remember that.
It was terrible.
I'm sure there were people, I mean, young people now dress as if they're in the 80s sometimes. And it gives me the heebie-jeebies. Pastel pink, lemon yellow. If I see someone in lemon yellow, I feel like I'm about to get the sack for being cheeky.
Yeah, I know exactly. Yeah.
A wedge cut, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Are shoulder pads back? Shoulder pads aren't back, are they?
Shoulder pads, they came back very briefly here about a year ago. I quite like a shoulder pad.
I don't mind it. I've reached a point in my life now where it's actually, I'm kind of thinking about putting them in my shirt like Larry King used to do.
Yeah.
So what's happening with you now then? What are you doing? Are you off on, because you still travel so much?
Yeah.
Do you still do that?
I'm just finishing a book this week. And then we're going to the QE2 are having a festival on it.
In Los Angeles?
No.
Where is it?
We're going from Southampton to New York. We get it free. We give a couple of workshops. And I'm saying I'm not using the royal we. It's like me and Christopher Brooksmar and Mark Billingham. Me and Stevie are getting
Right.
And then they fly you back business class. So we're going to do that. So that'll be lovely. And then, so we're just traveling around a lot.
Wait, so you crossed the Atlantic on the QE2?
Yeah. In November.
And where do you end up?
New York.
When?
On the 23rd of November. Are you around?
I fly I'm going from Atlanta to Paris on the 24th.
What are you doing in Paris?
I'm meeting Megan. Because I'm doing stand-ups. Do you want to come? You and Stevie come to Paris and we'll go out and eat too much?
That'd be so nice. Well, we're staying in the Chelsea for a few nights and then we're going to fly back via Iceland and then I think we're all going to go to
I've
Munich.
done that. Yeah. Have you been to Iceland?
Oh, it's great.
It's good, isn't it?
It is great. Yeah, it's great. But like all Scandinavian countries, ultimately really boring.
How dare you?
I like messy places. Do you know what I mean? I like Nepal and, Milwaukee and places that have got a bit of mess about them.
Yeah, I've never been to Nepal, but I've been to Milwaukee a couple of times. But now if it's like if Nepal's like Milwaukee, I don't need to go.
It's not like
no.
It's not like it. There's a lot more decapitated animals in the street, from my experience.
Jeez. I've never seen that in Milwaukee. I'm not saying it's not there, but I haven't seen it.
I'm sure it is.
Are you following the political climate in the United States right now?
I do believe there is an election going on.
Actually, by the time this goes out, it'll have gone on.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think, so.
And how are you feeling about that? Because you're actually there.
It's funny. I steer away from publicly. I mean, you know how I feel about politics and stuff, but I steer away from publicly discussing it because it's such a divisive tool. I mean, it seems like the only thing that anyone agrees on is that you can use someone's political opinion to shame them. But I think that what I've taken some solace from, funnily enough, it goes back around to that Rizzio thing of yours, because I get into these historical novels of Gore Vidal. I read the Narratives of Empire. He wrote 7 historical books about the United States from 1776 to 1954. Yeah. And what was fascinating about it is that there's nothing fucking new about this.
Yeah.
Nothing. I think that America, to me, is one of the things about America, it is a national expression of Jungian duality. It's always been at war with itself. It's always had this fucking, push-pull. And I think it's no different. But it's kind of frightening, though. It kind of gets your attention because there's a lot of hyperbole and fear, and you don't know how much of it is real,
Yeah. I mean, I think if you look at it in a historical context, very importantly, people are much easier to control if they're very frightened.
Yes.
And that's both sides of doing that, hyping people up.
Totally.
And I'm obsessed with the Civil War. Are you interested in the Civil War?
Yes, I am actually. I became fascinated by it through I mean, I'm actually, right now, I'm still kind of stuck on the Revolutionary War, the kind of the first one. But but have you been around the Civil War battle sites as well? That kind of stuff?
No, but me and my cousin are going to do it. Me and my cousin are.
It's amazing.
It's a weird thing that you get so interested in the Civil War at age 52 and a half, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Isn't it? But you can see the whole world in that. You can see the whole, the impossibility of victory and suddenly victory because a drunk guy just set fire to everything because the drunk guy started a fight. And, and how spoiled that became afterwards. And it's funny because I was trying to write something for an Alistair Gray thing about contraband camp. Do you know what contraband camp is?
I don't know what that is.
Slaves that ran away during the Civil War were called contraband because they were a contraband of war. So they sent up camps everywhere, and all these incredibly well-meaning white women like me went to work in contraband camps to teach people to read. And they had all these really sort of idealistic ideas about how they were going to save everybody. And then they got there and they just realized how grim it was and how it was systematic. And, it didn't matter what people saved or if they got jobs or anything like that. They just the whole system was up against them. But I mean, I thought, I can't even identify the language to use about people of color in that context. Or
I know.
I don't even know how you could speak about that. But but I mean, there's nothing new. And, just be kind to the people you meet, even if you don't agree with them. I think there's maybe like 3 or 4% of people who really are trouble and mental and and, you know, really do want war. And the rest of us are just trying to look after our mum and keep the house tidy.
Yeah, it seems to be my experience. And because I go to, like, I do stand up in, you know, very different, you know, kind of political environments in the United States, like geographically. And the, you know, my rule and my deal with the audience that I've had since about 2016 is, for the hour and a half I'm on stage, we're going to forget about that. I'm going to do something else. So all the shit that you're angry about, I'll still be there when you leave the theater, but we're going to take a break. I need a fucking break.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so I'm not going to do it, because I'm even at the stage now where I'm sick of the people I agree with. I'm like, you know, when they're talking, I'm like, fucking shut up. You know, I mean, even if I agree with what they're saying, I'm like, for fuck's sake. And it is an odd time, but when is it not a fucking odd time?
No, but I have to say, politicians of this generation are crap at their job, because they have a job to do, and your job is to run things. Shut up, stay out of our face, and let us make films, write books, why are we talking about you doing your job all the time? Do your job.
I know.
You know?
I know.
You know what I mean?
I feel the same way. It's like, shut the fuck up and get the bills paid. Keep the lights on. You know,
you're an administrator. Shut your nuts and do your job.
Well, we got that sorted. And I feel like I've spent half an hour in your kitchen, and I always feel the better for that.
Well, it's lovely to see you.
It's lovely to see you too.
Looking so healthy.
Oh, thanks very much.
I've been
moisturising. You look amazing, by the way. Are you using collagen or something? You look fabulous.
I am. Yeah.
Are you really?
This is actually the back of my head. I just shaved my head and drew
a face on it. All right. It's lovely to see you. Give my best to Stevie and Owen, and I'll. Megan, I know, wants to talk to you, but she can't do it in the podcast, so I think she's...
Tell her to give me a ring. Well, maybe see you over Christmas, pals. That'd be lovely.
Yeah, definitely. All right.
Yeah?
Aye. Have a lovely time on the boat. I'm sorry I'm going to miss you in New York.
I think we might be being sick all the time.
All right. It's lovely to see you. Take care.
Okay, darling. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. Bye.